So for those of you watching on YouTube or listening on our podcast, then please do share on social media, subscribe to the podcast, etc. For those of you here with us, the good fortune to be with us in person, you'll get to ask some questions a bit later. Dan Meridor began his career in public life as Menachem Begin's cabinet secretary and continued in that role for Begin's successor, Yitzhak Shamir. He went on to hold elected office himself over a 20-year career, beginning with his election to the Knesset in 1983 as an MK for the Likud. He would go on to hold many important ministerial roles, including, of course, Justice Minister under Shamir, and in later governments as Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and many other things. Dan Meridor, thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Dan is a good friend of the center and someone who's joined us for so many events. Usually, I should say, to talk about Menachem Begin, because he was someone you were so close to and knew so well and admired. But you, of course, also worked with and under Yitzhak Shamir. And we talked about Begin last time with Herzl Markov. And Shamir, following Begin after his shock resignation, I guess, which for those of you who've been in the museum may recall that a younger Dan Meridor announced, sitting at the cabinet table. There's that video of you announcing the resignation. And Shamir was such a different character to Begin. So I guess my first question to you is, how do you think he successfully sort of stepped out of Begin's shadow and became a very different kind of prime minister, different kind of leader who was clearly very well respected and admired by many Israelis? He was I think at this point the third longest serving prime minister. Bibi overtook him and then overtook Ben-Gurion, but Shamir was the number two behind Ben-Gurion for a very long time as the second longest serving. So what did Shamir bring to the role? Because he obviously was a very different figure to Menachem Begin.
I would not like to compare the two. Begin was one of a kind.
Yeah.
Historic figure. I had the good opportunity to work with and be quite close with. And I don't think Yitzhak Shamir would agree with your statement that he walked out of a shadow of Begin.
Okay.
He never pretended to. He said he was continuing, although there are differences, and I'll come to them immediately. This is a very personal thing. Usually in people and in politicians, there should be a balance between the ego and the issue. Shamir was of the minimal ego I ever met in politics. It was never about himself. He served the Zionist cause the way he understood it. It is not about Shamir, it's about the Jewish state, about Israel, about the Zionist cause. And this is quite rare, of course, compared to today, but even in those days. When Begin resigned in August of 1983, sorry?
Maybe this is not close.
Is that working?
It should be. Maybe I need to just put it somewhere else. Some closer. Okay.
Do you hear me better now? Or not yet? Is there something wrong with the mic, maybe?
I think if you turn.
Maybe your mic.
Okay. Fair enough.
Is it better now? So I don't say the answers are more important than the questions, but if you want to hear me.
They are.
Usually the questions are quite indicative. In any way, when Begin resigned, which was a surprise to many people, there was a shock in the movement. How could we do without Begin? And I remember I was the secretary of the cabinet. I refrained from any political activity when I was in that job because I thought this is a mamlachti, a state job. So I resigned for every political post I had in the Likud. There was one exception. the Likud ministers came to my home. They wanted something neutral to discuss who they're going to support. There were two options on the table, Yitzhak Shamir or David Levy. And I remember the meeting saying, we'll go for Yitzhak Shamir. Why is that? It's a good question. I can't go to the thinking of everyone, but in a way, he was from the same generation, if you want, the same caliber, a commander of the underground, like Begin was the commander of the Irgun, the Etzel. Shamir was one of the three commanders of Lehi, of the Stern group, as they called it. He was brought to politics by Begin. He was not in politics. After the state was established, he did not continue in politics. In the Lehi group, they had an interesting group of people. Some went very much to the left, some to the right, some socialists, a very interesting group of people. He was not one of the leftists, obviously, but he did not go to politics. In no time, he was recruited to the Mossad and worked in the Mossad for many years in Europe and other places. And in the 70s sometime, Begin asked him to join the Likud as, I think, the head of the Machleket Irgun, the organization department of the Likud in Metzudat Ze'ev in Jabotinsky house in Tel Aviv. And he was active in the party, but then he became member of Knesset. When Likud came to power, he was elected rather by the Knesset as the Speaker of the Knesset. He is not a man of pomp and majesty, but he was that. This is a job he was asked to perform, and he did it very well. And then he was Minister of Foreign Affairs when Dayan resigned under Begin. And then came the time that Begin resigned to his home, and Shamir was the candidate. I remember the meeting of the Central Committee of the Likud when he won the election against David Levy, I think 60-40 or something like that. And he became prime minister because people pushed him there. He did not act for it. He did not arrange many political machinery. This was unique. He's not, you don't see it many people. But it's very indicative of him even along the coming years. He asked me to stay as the secretary of the cabinet to help him, which I did very willingly. And then I don't speak about myself, but in 1983, he was prime minister for until 1984. 84, we had election, and the election left us with a draw. Nobody could have a government on its own, and we had a national unity government with rotation. The first one would be Peres for 2 years, and then Shamir for 2 years.
This is the Labour and Likud.
Labour and Likud,
basically
right.
both got 40-something seats.
Yeah, we got 40-something seats.
Yeah.
And no one could have a coalition of their own, and we had a national unity government, which would have an impact on what I'm going to tell in the coming years. And we had it. So Shamir was prime minister. He resigned, and Peres got in after the election in 84. Until 86, Peres was. Somebody has a phone, I think.
Someone didn't hear my request at the beginning. Okay.
Okay. And in 84, when we signed the agreement of rotation with Peres, there were many skeptics who said Peres will not keep his promise, and there won't be a rotation. And everybody was quite anxious about it. I used to say, no way, Peres, a decent man, how can you think of it, of course? And Shamir was really rock strong. He didn't care much until this is a true story. It's quite interesting. I believe when the time we approached, I think October of 86, and we don't know, will there be or won't there be a rotation? So Shamir asked me, you're friends with Rabin. Rabin was the Minister of Defense on the Labour side, very important character in the Labour Party, not yet Prime Minister then. Go to Yitzhak Rabin, ask him, is there going to be rotation? So I call Yitzhak Rabin. I came to his apartment late at night in Tel Aviv, in Ramat Aviv, Rehov Harav Ashi 8, if I remember correctly. And I say, Yitzhak, Shamir asked me, he sent me to ask you, will there be rotation or not? So I will never forget his answer. It was very private. I never public it, but I'll say it in English. He said in Hebrew, Dan, what do you think? Whom do I prefer as Prime Minister, Peres or Shamir? Don't worry.
So just to say,
this is a true story. I know witnesses, I and Rabin and his wife, but I'm telling it not just for the joke of it, the truth of it, but because they had very common language. They both were very practical people.
Rabin and Shamir.
Rabin and Shamir. Rabin and Peres didn't get along very well.
We heard about that when we heard about Rabin a couple of sessions.
But Shamir and Peres, Shamir and Rabin got very well. They did not come from the same school. They did not have the same idea about how to go in the end of the road. Rabin was for a compromise. Shamir would not give up an inch. But none of them thought that he can bring Messiah now, that he can end the conflict. So they both were practical on how to manage the things, how to do it right. They both believed in the importance of security and defense, and they had very good relationship. So this is how Shamir became prime minister from second time, from 86 to 88. In 88, election again. This time we won, the Likud of then, not the Likud of today. And we had the government of our own. I negotiated the coalition agreement with the labor, but with no rotation. Shamir was there to be 4 years as prime minister. Great success. It held on until March of 90, when Peres, in something that will not be remembered as a high quality, tried to topple down the government from within and make his own government. What Rabin called in Hebrew, Targil HaMasriach, the stinking maneuver.
Yeah.
He succeeded to topple down the government in the Knesset. We lost the confidence vote. But then when he wanted to establish a new government, to form a new government, he failed. And Shamir was able to do that. So Shamir continued as prime minister until 1992. Then we lost the election. Rabin became prime minister. So I speak of this period. I gave you the political background to this. He appointed me in 1988 as Minister of Justice for the two governments that he had at 88 until 92. And we worked very well together all the time. Let me tell you, there's one or two things I want to tell, stories about Shamir that I think are very important. Not many people know about them.
But Dan, before you do, I'm getting nervous that microphone is going to fall off. I want to just, sorry.
Because of the contents of what I said?
No, nothing to do with the contents, but I want to put it on here. Okay. There.
Late 80s, the Soviet Union begins to fall apart. We didn't know it yet. It seemed crazy. They were so strong and so steady since 1917. Who could have thought it would happen? But there were signs. We, of course, with the American help and other people, waged this campaign of let my people go. And the question of Aliyah from Soviet Russia was very important. But on top and above the Jewish story, there were Gorbachev, Perestroika, and so forth. And there was a beginning of allowing Jews to come out. We go in 1988, I think it was, to the United States, to Washington. Shamir, I was with him, to talk with George Shultz. George Shultz was the American Secretary of State, an economist from Chicago, a very, very able and very good man, and very good friend of Israel. And we speak with him at the State Department on the 7th floor, and about strategic relationship and help to Israel. When the meeting comes to an end, Shamir says, I have one other thing I want to raise with you. Yes. There was then a rule in the United States, either a law or some government decision, trying to help Soviet Jews, that every Jew who comes out of the Soviet Union is considered stateless and he can come to America and have either green card or maybe even citizenship. Shamir tells Schultz, I remember the words, "You insult me." What's that? After 1948, there are no stateless Jews. Jews who live in America, who live in the Soviet Union, have a place to go. This is a Jewish state. They want to leave, they will leave. I don't call them in, but to call Jews stateless. I ask you to cancel, to change this law. Schultz thought of it and agreed. Schultz writes it in his memoirs, in his book. When the meeting ended, I was in good terms with Schultz. I told Schultz, you know, we had two decisions here. One on defense aid to Israel. The other is about Soviet Jewry. The second is much more important than the first. I remember Shamir saying to me, Jews who go from Moscow to New York, who cares where they are? They're not here. He was afraid that if America opened its gates, and there's going to be possibly huge aliyah, which it was, we didn't know it then, but it was coming. And he was afraid that we are going to miss this opportunity. And thanks to Schultz, thanks to Shamir and Schultz, the law was changed. And 1 million more Jews from Soviet Russia, from Soviet Union, came to Israel. Now, this is a small story about one meeting, the end of a meeting on a different subject, I think changed history. Yeah. And this was Shamir. For him, Aliyah and Eretz Israel, Aliyah and the land and the Jews in Israel, this was almost everything. Yeah. And I think this small story, you don't know it because Shamir never cared about publishing what he was doing. He never cared about how he looks, what people write about him. He cared about the issue. The issue is Aliyah or the security and so forth. And I am the one remaining alive to tell the story. Shamir never told it. I remember it happening. Schultz, thank God, or thank Schultz, wrote it in his memoirs as well, so we can have even evidence if somebody needs it. This is one story of 1988. A different story I want to tell that you know of, the Gulf War. 1990, August 2nd, Iraq conquers Kuwait. You remember that, Saddam Hussein? Huge surprise. We didn't know, nobody knew. Just en passant, I'll tell you on noon, I think a day earlier, our intelligence man in Washington asked the American intelligence, will there be invasion to Kuwait? He said, no way. In 6 hours, there was no Kuwait. Yeah. And this is interesting to see how intelligence makes mistakes. But okay, Kuwait was occupied, and it was clear that America, President Bush then, will help the Kuwaitis and take Kuwait, free Kuwait from Iraqi grip. And we knew it was coming. And America then, President Bush, arranged a coalition, a very impressive coalition, with many Arab countries, Syria included and others, against Saddam Hussein, against Iraq. And we knew it was coming, so we prepared what will we do and so forth. And there was a problem for us. We knew that Saddam Hussein had missiles. Missiles that can reach Israel, Scud missiles. We even had information that might or might not have been correct in retrospect from the CIA, that he may have, or that he does have, chemical warheads to some of these missiles. This was, to this day, I don't know whether it was true or not, but he had many missiles, hundreds of missiles. And we speak in a time, today it looks normal to missiles. Missiles were not part of the game then. Okay, the war starts. American and others attack Iraq on January, I think, 17th of 1991. And the Iraqis launched rocket attacks. And here's the problem, a leadership problem. Our knee-jerk reaction, our basic instinct people shoot at you, shoot back. Legitimate it is. But it took some thinking to understand it's a different kind of war. The regular war we're used to is the Jews fight the Arabs and the Americans come and try to arrange everything and make peace or make ceasefire. Here it's different. The Americans are fighting the Arabs. We're not part of the story. Saddam wants us to attack him, to present it as an Arab-Jewish war. And the Americans, of course, didn't want it to happen because it will make collapse the coalition. Yeah. And I remember talking with Shamir about this when it happened. And Shamir, from day one, understood he's not going to order, or the government's not going to order under him, attacks on Iraq. They deserve to be attacked. We had every legitimacy. It would be stupid. It will disturb the Americans, and they won't be able to achieve the goals of the war. And not that we had a trick that we do it and they will collapse. America is strong enough to do it on its own. There was a public demand to do it from almost every corner. Because this is how we were raised. You don't sit like a sitting duck. And there were 40 or 41 missiles landed in Israel, in Ramat Gan, in Tel Aviv, in Haifa. Not many people were killed. I think very few. I don't remember if any, but maybe not even.
There was someone from a heart attack.
Nothing, but still, being attacked by rockets is not something countries should accept as normal. But Shamir had the wisdom and the leadership not to ask what people want, not to go to the pollsters, but to do what he thinks is right and lead Israel this way. Not all the ministers knew of it. In the cabinet meeting that we used to have twice a week, there would be a debate, do it, not do it. He never said publicly, I won't do it. I'll tell you a minute why. But I knew he's not going to do it because this is what he told me in the first day. He didn't want the Americans to know we are not going to do it because he wanted them to take care of the missile launchers in west of Iraq. He said, if we may do it for us. So he didn't, some ministers to this day say, we were the ones to tell Shamir not to, not true. Shamir decided from day one, and I give it to, say to his credit, against his basic instinct, against what was expected. He knew it was time for restraint, it served us better. So these are the, and this has worked, of course. These are the two things I wanted to start with in the beginning. One is restraint, and not to act, and another is very active to do things. On Aliyah, he took a step that was not easy. American Jewish organizations were very much against it. They agreed, they thought they succeeded to get from the administration the help to Jews to come to America, to Brighton Beach or wherever. And they didn't like the fact that we say, don't let Jews go to America. But Shamir didn't care about this. A Zionist that he was, Israel is the story, Aliyah is what we need. And he was active here and passive here, if you like. Yeah. And this is very unique. It's really thinking on the merits of the issue. Can I say no politics, no personal gains? What is right? He may have been right or wrong. I think it was right, but one can discuss it, but it was always on the merits.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of things I wanted to follow up on.
Speak up because your mic is not good.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we've heard. Okay, so a couple of things I want to follow up on. One was that you mentioned how the massive aliyah from the Soviet Union was this great opportunity as Shamir saw it, but it was also a massive challenge because you had, it was a country of what was then, I don't know, 5 million people absorbing another 1.5 million people. Yeah. How did Shamir see that challenge? And how did it also, and I wanted to go on to talk about the relationship with the Bush administration, because if there was a kind of transition from Reagan, who was one of these, I guess, one of these sort of very kind of instinctively pro-Israel presidents, to Bush, who maybe was a little less favorable, at least in an obvious way. And the Bush and the Shamir and the Bush administration definitely had let's say a challenging relationship at times. How did that play into?
Well, you asked two different questions. One is how we dealt with Aliyah,
right?
In absorption of Aliyah,
right? But I'm thinking
it had to do with the longer that you come to. But
You can connect it.
I'll say something about Aliyah and then
Please.
loan guarantees and then about the relationship with the Bush
Sure.
administration. 1 million Jews are coming. We didn't know, but it's a big number, 100,000 per year. And it's a huge challenge. Think of it, it's about 15% addition to population in 2 years. Think of America having some 50 million people in 2 years. This is the proportion. What about the education system, health system, housing? It's a huge challenge. I think one major decision that we made then, because of our economic policy, is to do it in a very different way compared to what Israel did in the 50s and 60s. 50s and 60s, you came, the government told you, you live there, this is your work, and start doing socialists. We decided not to interfere. Every couple or family that came got money, to remember some of the numbers, and you decide where you want to rent an apartment, where you want to open business. We'll help you, but we don't tell you what to do. Free market to people who never knew free market, unless the black market is free market in Soviet Russia. And we took this risk. This is the swimming pool, start swimming. And I think in retrospect, it was a huge success, the absorption of this aliyah, because the government really didn't tell them what to do, how to do it, where to live. They decided whether they want to give more money to buying or to developing business or where they live. And the number is not important, but it was substantial money. We built then, we formed a Aliyah cabinet headed by Arik Sharon. I remember I was part of that, and we sat every week, once or twice, to coordinate all the other things. I don't want to go into details, but in retrospect, it was a huge success. The absorption, and Israel was elevated and bettered with this aliyah immensely. The Israeli economy, Israeli society, the value, everything is really one of the most important and exciting things that I had to play part in. I remember that, we now look at it backwards. Israel, there was a boycott on Israel from the whole Eastern Bloc. And I remember when they started to come, I used to go to Ben Gurion Airport. I was a minister, very nice Volvo, so they let me in, just to look at what I see. You see planes landing and thousands of people coming from Moscow, St. Petersburg, Odessa, Kiev. Huge numbers, like an exodus. Again, coming here, and it was so exciting. People with children, families, and going down and coming to our country. You see the raison d'etre of a Jewish state.
Yeah.
And one couldn't help but thinking of 60 years earlier, when Jews wanted to run away from Europe, there was no way to go, and they were killed. Now here you have where to go. This is, to me, one of the most exciting spectacles I saw when I had some minimal part in.
Zionism in action.
Yeah, Zionism in action, the raison d'etre. This is why we have a Jewish state. Here it is, and it works. So this is about Aliyah. Shamir saw it as a very important job of the government, challenge of the government. And I think we did it well. Again, all of us, it's not one person, but he was the leader, he was the prime minister. When we saw Aliyah coming, we knew many people are coming. We needed investment for all that goes with it, factories, whatever you need. And we asked the Americans not for money, but for loan guarantees. We'll take loans from the banks. Give us your guarantee, the banks will give us the money. And George Bush, the father, refused. This was a clash that we had with the administration. Otherwise, it was very all right with us. In the end, when I spoke, and I think it was published by some of the people who worked with them, they wanted to help the Labour Party, our Labour Party, which they did. And the loan guarantees were given when Rabin became prime minister.
So it was with the election. With the election
they didn't say
in
it, but I think either Dennis Ross or Martin Indig, Alav Shalom, told me this. They had this idea that Shamir is too tough and this and so forth. so we had a clash. But other than that, we had a very good relationship with the American administration. People, and I don't know compared to what there is today. Today, I don't understand anything about America, but the people who worked, many people in the administration, both in the National Security Council, in the State Department, in the White House, are people that we had very good terms with. Some names you may know, Ambassador Martin Indyk just died a year ago in New York. He was a very high figure. Dan Kurtzer, who is now teaching in American University. Dennis Ross, who has a house in Tel Aviv as well, was important. All these people I met a lot of times, many times, and we had good relationship and things worked quite well along those years, not on this long guarantees, I say, but the relationship was not bad. Here comes another story that has to do with that. Arab-Jewish or Israel-Arab relationship, Palestinians, Syrians. 1977, Begin, Sadat, Israel peace with Egypt. A huge dramatic change in history. I think the most important step Israel ever took and changed the Middle East entirely. We took Egypt outside the circle of war. The Arab unity of hostility broke down, and there was a beginning of accepting Israel in the Middle East. I have to say, by the way, Shamir did not vote for it. Shamir would not give up an inch. He didn't vote against it in the Knesset because I think he didn't want to oppose Begin openly, but he was not for it. But never mind, he accepted it. It's a fact of life. What else? In 1991, there was, after the Gulf War, the Gulf War ended in March, I think, of 91, January to March, something like that. I remember a meeting. I was sent by Shamir to Washington in March, I think it was, and I met with James Baker, who was the Secretary of State, and they wanted to push for negotiation between us and the Arab Palestinians and others. I don't want to go into all the details, but in the end of it, there was a conference that was convened in Madrid in November 91. For the first time in history, Israel sitting in a conference on making peace with Syria, a Syrian delegation, Jordanian Palestinian joint delegation, not the PLO, Jordanian Palestinian, Lebanese delegation, maybe something else. And there was a very festive opening by Shamir, was there and spoke there. And there were negotiations held, and they continued under Shamir. With the Syrians, with none of them, it ended up in agreement. But there was a novelty here for Arabs to come and talk directly to Israel. It was never done before, other than Egypt, of course.
Yeah.
And so and Shamir went there. I remember in February, March of 91, after the Gulf War, the chief of intelligence, Uri Sagi, who is still with us, comes to me or to the secretary, to the military secretary, and says, I think that Assad is ready for negotiations.
Hafez al-Assad.
Hafez al-Assad, the father of the eye doctor. Yeah. And I remember he came to me, I said to Uri, go to Shamir and tell him. Now think of it, Shamir would not give up an inch because was his view. But he was very respectful of professional people. He would listen to them and talk with them. And and Uri Sagi came to him and told him, Assad, we think in the intelligence that Assad is ready for negotiation. And this, in a way, led Shamir to go along and come to Madrid conference. He knew there is a way, but not that he changed his views, and in the end, there was no agreement. By the way, there was no agreement by Rabin later, because he continued with Rabin and they couldn't have an agreement as well. Rabin was the prime minister, Itamar Rabinovich was negotiating for him, and the Syrians didn't want in the end. But Shamir went there in 91 to Madrid in that process of expanding the stability and peace in the Middle East. On the Palestinian issue, Jordanian Palestinian, there was very little progress there. In the end, negotiations were held. The government was changed. We were replaced by Rabin, Labour, in 92. A negotiation was still held in Washington between Israel and the Palestinian Judean delegation. And then all of a sudden, September 93, we are all surprised by Oslo agreement. We didn't know, I was in the opposition, we didn't know of it. The people who negotiated for Israel in Washington didn't know of it. They were saying, no, PLO, never, because this was our position. And all of a sudden, we were surprised to understand that there is, behind the scenes, or behind the back of some people, there was agreement with the PLO, allowing them to be their representative and so forth. So all these negotiations collapsed, and Oslo had its own route, which didn't yield any positive results in the end as well. But this was already not Shamir. Something about Shamir and the civil service, public service, because he was, I don't know because of what, but he was very respectful of professional people. He didn't appoint people for the political positions. The man he appointed to be the head of his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dave Kimchi, was a peace now man. But he was a man he knew from the Mossad, and he counseled him and he had him in. They worked wonderfully together. He decided, Shamir decided the policy, and Kimchi did it. We had to appoint a new governor for the Bank of Israel. It was very important because the new Minister of Finance was not an economist, and we had huge trouble, I'll come to in a minute, with hyperinflation, what to do with it. And I offered him, professor in the Hebrew University, Zichrono Livracha, Michael Bruno, was a friend of mine. He was teaching, but my wife, I did his PhD with him, a good friend. He is on the other side politically. Very respectable, very smart and honest man. Told Shamir, take Bruno, he'll be the lighthouse for all of us. And Shamir did it. And he worked wonderfully with Michael Bruno, who was again, said if it were on politics, he would not agree with you. With the economy, you can believe every word he said, you can count on him. And he did it all along the way.
Whoa, goodness. Okay.
It's hard to compete with
It's a little more drama than we needed, I think.
Okay. So Shamir really had his own, even people in the foreign ministry, when he was foreign minister, say that he's one of the ministers who took seriously the kidim, the people who work in the office. At least the decision of policy is his. Yeah. He would not shift from his views. But he understood the importance of all the wisdom, the experience, the know-how that is with these people that politicians don't necessarily have because they are in that topic. They are there all the time and they know. So he worked with them very well. Shamir, and again, I can say it personally, we had very close relationship. And I not always agreed with me. I have my way of talking, and I remember one day he tells me, I heard you in the morning on the radio. You said, מצד אחד, מצד שני, from one side, this, from that side. There are no two sides, there's only one side. I tell him, no, it's like there are two sides. I explain why we are right. No, there's only one side. He was very, I wasn't narrow-minded, but very clear-minded. There are no two sides. We are right, they are wrong, that's it. Okay. I don't speak that way. So we had this difference in what did I say? Style. In style. Yeah. But I really, I can't say adored, admired. I loved him because he was so decent and on the issue, never side issues, no politics and decision-making. And he really had this Zionist dream. One thing that people don't speak of a lot, and I don't know whether I should raise it or not, he knew how to discipline himself. I once told him, Yitzhak, he was not a great speech maker like Begin. Begin was a great orator, Shamir was not. But he spoke well. I told him, Yitzhak, why do you read from papers? Speak, it's not, speak. Then he told me, nothing like this, if I don't read from papers, I say things I shouldn't say. So he knew how to discipline himself. He knew that if he says what he thinks, it may be wrong. So he wrote down and everything was disciplined. The same thing with the coalition he had with the Haredim, with the Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox. He had coalitions and he kept the agreements, but between us, he had a very clear view. He always said to me, I will never forgive them. Them, he said, he gave a description I don't want to repeat here. I remember before I came to, he made Aliyah in 1935, I think. When I was still in Poland, in Europe, wherever I went with the Zionist cause, Beitar, who opposed me? All the rabbis. What are you doing? Wait for Mashiach. We shouldn't do that. What are you doing? I'll never forgive them. I remember that he said it all the time.
Wow.
I'll never forgive them. The Haredim, those who objected to Zionism. This was the most Haredi community then.
Right.
So he had the very correct coalition agreements with them. He needed them because he was disciplined. But his view, he was very tough on this. Historically, he saw the destruction of European Jewry. I mean, we all know it. You know, until the 19th century, in the 19th century, beginning of 19th century, 90% of the Jews lived in Europe, 10% in the Arab countries. Then Europe started to look dangerous. Over 2 million ran to America, some to South America, some from Vilna to Lithuania, England. But this was the heart of the Jewish people, and it was destroyed. And he saw it happening. The Zionism tried to save them and couldn't. We didn't have a state in time.
Yeah.
So Shamir lived this crisis all his life. And he had a full, a heart or mind against the objection of the religious teachers who said, we sin this, we are in exile, we should wait for Mashiach, we shouldn't go. This was the position. And he didn't say it publicly because but I'm telling you from many, many talks, this was unique about him. He was not religious at all. Begin was much more respectful of religion. He was not. Shamir, don't want to tell stories what he ate and how, but this is what, this is things I don't, he did like that. Okay, but really, a Zionist full through, he would say, a servant of the Zionist cause. This is how he saw himself and felt responsible for the Jewish people and for the land. And he said, it was very tough, but very realistic. He was not tough in the sense that he won't read reality and learn it and try to navigate within reality. But he would not, he would maneuver and left and right here and there, but he would not change the basic course, and the goal is there. It was always very much, Shamir was tough. They say as a rock, he was that sort of a man. Personally, very, very nice to people. He was not, I had never heard him shouting at anybody or people working with him. I think, again, some people he liked more than others, to put it mildly, like all of us. But the government operated very well.
One last question before I go to the audience. One thing we haven't touched on is the Intifada, the first Intifada, which broke out end of 1987, right?
The
first Intifada.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. December 87. Yeah.
Right, December 87 breaks out. And it came up actually when we talked with Itamar Rabinovich about Rabin. Because
Rabin was the Minister of Defense.
He was the very
He was in South America
line.
when he started. He was in South America when he started. And
right.
then came and...
right.
Okay,
so Shamir is prime minister.
Yeah.
And one of the things you'll hear from, I think you hear from the left is, okay, so Rabin wins the 92 election. And the way the Intifada eventually was effectively ended was because we, Israel, did Oslo. We went into negotiations with the PLO. And so that was the end of the Intifada. Now, Shamir, of course, would not have done Oslo. We can safely assume.
No doubt.
So it's a counterfactual, but had Shamir won that election, how do you think he would have looked to defeat the first Intifada? Because he wasn't going to go into negotiations with Arafat.
First of all, I want to warn myself, I may not remember correctly, but what I remember is the Intifada.
You remember better than us.
No, I don't. Maybe I know. Really, I don't want to mislead you. I don't think Intifada ended with Oslo. It ended much earlier.
Right, but
So
okay.
it's not Oslo. Oslo may be right or wrong. I voted against it, but okay, people
Right,
had-
but I think
But
they
the
would say
Intifada,
that.
Oslo is the September 93.
Sure.
The Intifada was 87, 88, 89, more or less. The 90, it was almost
Do you
not
think
there.
it was done by then?
Again, we'll need to check it, but
Okay, fair
it
enough.
was not heavy. Yeah, there was terror from here and there,
Sure.
but not much. No, I don't think. Rabin was the man who ran the army, who gave orders to the army in the Intifada,
Yeah,
and Shamir gave him every backing.
yeah.
I was the one to cause some troubles to Rabin because there were things I was against. I thought he was exaggerating,
Interesting,
but not
okay.
Shamir. Shamir was all the way with him and helped him, and they had no argument between them on the Intifada, not at all. It was, it's again, people speak of surprise. We lived 20 years from 67 to 87, from the Yom
6 Day
Days War. And there was no Intifada or anything else. We thought they accepted.
Yeah,
And then there was a car accident at the entrance of Gaza,
yeah,
and people were killed. All of a sudden, outburst of violence
yeah.
that we never saw in the past. And we didn't see it a day earlier. Again, I speak of intelligence. I don't criticize. I'm one of them. I didn't see it coming. Nobody saw it coming. And it came. And because of a car that had an accident in the entrance to Gaza, and then it was tough, and people were killed and wounded and so forth. And the army acted very forcefully, and they ended it in 2 or 3 years. I don't remember the exact date.
Okay.
But the other Intifada started in 2000, October 2000,
Right, yeah.
with they went on until Arafat died, more or less.
Yeah,
Abu
that's
Mazen
a
came
different
in.
matter
It's a
entirely.
different story.
Second
It's not.
Intifada,
Shamir
yeah, of
wasn't
course.
there already.
Sure.
No, Shamir wasn't there already.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask my colleagues, Abigail, yes, microphone shama? Merci. Okay, so down here there's a lady. There's a lady, and if you could just wait for the microphone. Daluk. There you go. Okay. Oh, we've got two. Excellent. Okay. So just down here, there's a lady. Can you put your hand up so that my colleague can see you? He's going to bring the microphone to you. Just to make sure, just speak.
Well, maybe one other thing that I want to say before you ask, because it may be relevant today. Shamir comes from the Lehi, from the Stern group, and Mossad guy is not a bleeding heart liberal and so forth. But in 1984, when he was prime minister the first time, there was information about what was later called the Jewish underground. Jews who tried to kill Arabs and tried to blow up the Temple Mount, the Muslim Temple Mount. Shamir was the prime minister, head of the Shin Bet, of the security service. And under him, they caught these people and we stopped the whole thing. I remember one day, he says to me, I gave now authority or approval to, I think it's listening device something, to a man, a boy. I was his sandak, I was his godfather. The father was a Lehi member and the son was, and Shamir did it.
Wow.
Because he said, this cannot be done. We should not allow Jewish terrorism.
Wow.
And under him, the Jewish underground was cut. And I remember the day he told me, I know who the name of the guy is. I was his sandak, I was his godfather, and now he allowed to eavesdrop or something to do to him. The security service need the prime minister to approve. Okay, this is different. So, but it relates to what happens today. That's why I say it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yes.
Oh, but
indeed.
doesn't happen today. Right?
Yes, madam.
Can you speculate how Shamir would do nowadays with all the social media we have? You have a very strong vision, a strong point of view. There aren't two sides to things. There's one side to things, and you're ready to take leadership. How would he do now with all the social media?
The simple answer is I don't know. A bit more detailed is I don't know if I can live with that world. I think I'm very concerned with what happened with the discourse. I don't want to mention a certain country with a certain president because we are recorded here. But in older days, not so many years ago, you wanted to turn to people's brains. There was emotion, yeah, but you tend to convince them, you're right, so you either spoke at the square, you spoke on television in a show, or you gave a radio speech on the Knesset, you write an article. Today, and people listen to the smart guys of their camp. Is this guy who offers economic plan, is it worth something? So my professor tells, yes, it's good, it's bad. There was legitimacy given by those who understand in both camps, left, right, religious, secular. The smart people had a role here. Today, you don't talk through any intermediary. You talk directly to the people. 5 billion people have this. And you can't talk to them more than 5 or 6 words. This all or 30 seconds. You can't talk to their brains. What is the right economic policy, or what is the right security policy, or whatever. But how do you get them? You talk to the guts, really. You talk to the guts, not the brain. And you are elected. The discourse now is not it's intellectually flat and emotionally very deep. All over the world, it's not only us. I look at the world because you speak very short. People don't, I see my grandchildren, I see what they don't read books anymore. They get the 5 seconds or 20 seconds, that's it. What is War and Peace of Thought? So give me AI a summary of it. They don't read it anymore. I'm expanding a little. This discourse in the society is, I think, very shallow. And in order to get attention or to get likes or whatever you call it, the more extreme, the more violent or sexy you are, the better off you are. The role of thinking, convincing, has been, I can't say lost, but diminished. Look at the world and see what happens around us. No, it's a huge, you can't stop it because we are going there. All of us have iPhones and we go with them. I can't do without it anymore. But to get everything in these short and shallow messages, everything is not the teacher tells you. One of my grandchildren who had the matriculation, and he had to be very smart guy, he's in a very unique, very elite unit in the army. He told me they have a matriculation to the French Revolution something. I told him I have books. No, I don't need books, I have a video. And he got AA with a video. They learn differently. So I think something quite significant is happening to us. The discourse is not a discourse of trying to convince in a rational way. I don't say there was no demagoguery in oratory. It was always big speeches were there, and there was an emotion. We all are human beings. We are not only rational. But there was a role and a pretense to speak to your wisdom, to convince you that I'm right and he's wrong. Today, it's not this. The other one is he's a Jew, he's a Muslim, he's a leftist, he's a black, he's a white. And this identity that you speak, your identity, not the topic. And this is how you win elections. So will Shamir be able, would Shamir have been, I can't tell you. I don't know if I can do it. I'm not there now, I'm out of it. And I see what happens. And I don't know whether I could convince, I don't like to convince people this way. I want to talk to the senses and try to explain why I'm right or why I'm wrong. I think this give them some respect. Now you talk to the basic instincts, and that's how you get there. So there's something more than Shamir about the challenge that we are having. Human nature, human culture, not only politics. Forgive me for expanding, but okay.
Okay, there were a couple of questions down here. I'm going to first go to the gentleman in the cap in the front row.
Thank you for coming. I recently heard Einat Wilf, who was a leftist who recently founded the O's Party. And she frequently refers to a speech that Sir Ernest Bevin, who was the Foreign Secretary of Britain, gave to Parliament in 1947. And among some of the things that he said, the key thing that he said was that the Jews only want one thing and the Arabs only want one thing. And this is what he said to Parliament. The Jews only want to have a sovereign state of their own, a Jewish state. And what do the Arabs want? They also only want one thing. They don't want Jews having their own state. period. And she said that she never really understood that this is really the reality, because she's a leftist and she thought that, well, what they want is, land. And she said, no, this is before occupation, it's before all the things. So I'm wondering if Shamir understood this, and didn't he? I mean, it seems pretty obvious that that's the situation, so.
So your question is, did Shamir agree with
Well,
that?
I
agree with that, yes.
Okay.
Whether Shamir agreed with Bevin, I don't think he didn't like him. Of course, Bevin was not a pro-Jewish guy anyway. The government of Bevin, of the labor after
But that
the
point,
election.
but did he agree with that point that?
I don't know. I try to be accurate. I don't remember Shamir saying this. I think Shamir. I don't think that Shamir would include all the Arabs in one box. The fact is that many Arabs don't do it anymore. Egypt, 50 years now, next year, 50 years, in peace with us. Now, Germany and France are 80 years in peace. Ukraine and Russia were not. So I don't know whether the Egyptians, do they like us now? Is it in their mind now to destroy Israel? We can always think, yes, in the back of the mind, but in action, in reality, 50 years, it's okay. Even more so with Jordan. The king of Jordan is a close friend. His father even more so. Intelligence-wise, does he like us? No, no way. Because we are in a country that the Arabs think should be Muslim and Arab and forth, and we think should be Jewish, and there is a basic conflict. But I think because of, it's more realpolitik, it's more the fact that you can't beat and join them, not that they love us. But I think that we have built a strong Israel, not only militarily, number of Jews here, economy, science, and our role in the world, and they understood one by one after 67, after 6 days war, that there is the need to live with us. And Begin understood this and gave all of Sinai away, so 2.5 times Israel, and made the most important contribution to Israel's security since then. And Egypt agreed. They broke the Arab unity then. And then Rabin with Hussein, the same thing. And Jordan is the longest border from Eilat to the Golan Heights. And it's entirely quiet. And I'm not in government now, but the cooperation between us and Jordan is very intimate. Do they like us? I don't know. But this is what, do the French like the Germans? I don't know. But this is really the world. So there are Arabs that don't think of how to get rid of the Jews. Some Gulf states and some North African states, there are those who admittedly and openly want to get rid of us. Definitely Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah. So I wouldn't put all of them in one box. To make my argument less convincing, I tell you the following. I was at Camp David in 2000, Camp David, Maryland, with Ehud Barak as Prime Minister, with Bill Clinton and Arafat. And I saw Ehud giving them more than I would have given, almost everything. And they said no. And interestingly, why did they say no? I would quote Clinton, but not directly. I spoke with him not once on this, but there was a very good article after Camp David collapsed. And Clinton put a finger at Arafat. And the best way to put it was by an article of Tom Friedman, who spoke with Clinton. And he says the following, it's in the form of the New York Times, of a letter from Bill to Yasser, from Bill Clinton to Yasser Arafat. And he says to him the following: if it's 1967, we'll help you. If it's 1948, forget about it. And it was 48. Because for Arafat, as far as I can say, for Arafat, it was not the territory's occupation. It's the very existence of a non-Muslim Jewish state here that he did not agree to. To make things more complicated, in 2008, our Prime Minister Ehud Olmert had the negotiation with Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, a much more likable person. It's a different story. And I can take what I'm telling you now, I take from the book of Condoleezza Rice, the Secretary of State. She wrote a very voluminous book on her work. I didn't read all of it, I have to admit. I read the part that I'm speaking of now. Olmert calls her and tells her, come, I think we can have an agreement. They had, I think, 260 meetings of the groups, Israeli, Palestinian, everything. And she comes over and sits in the Balfour, the president, prime minister, and he tells them, Palestinian state, about land, he wanted 6% of swap, but the quantity of land, the same quantity, which is a major gift. He offered what I would never have offered, but he offered the partition of Jerusalem, the Arabs' neighborhoods to Palestine, the Jewish neighborhoods to Israel, and the Holy Basin, what you call the old state, the old city, and around it, some international regime, which I don't know what it is. But one thing he said I don't want, once there is a state, there's no go to Israel, no right of return. They have a state, they would live there, not when they come to us. He said, I'm ready to allow 5,000 Palestinians politically, symbolically to come to Israel. That's it. She thinks she's bringing Mashiach. She writes, I didn't believe my ears. This is her words. And she calls the President Bush, and then his instruction, she goes to Ramallah to meet Abu Mazen. And she thinks here it is, that's it. It came to a point. And I think I quote verbatim, Abu Mazen told her in the end, he's again, nice speaking person. How can I tell 4 million Palestinians, only 5,000 go home? In other words, right of return again on. So even those who look more likely did not agree to have a Jewish state in the end. This is what Bev might have said. To put some footnote at Camp David, the last day, Clinton had another offer to say that we agreed on ABC, almost everything but Jerusalem. And he asked, there's a guy who passed away, Arikat, to go to Arafat and say, will you agree to this? And Arikat comes back. I sit with Amnon Lipkin-Shahak, our chief of staff, who is now dead, unfortunately, and with Muhammad Akhlan, who is still alive. And he hears that Arafat says no. So Dakhlan says, it's 1947 again, the same mistake. So he might have thought that he should have said yes and accept Israel. Again, it's my reading of what he said. It's a footnote. It's not the text. The text is they said no. But there were voices there that they should come to an agreement with us. So far, it didn't work even with the most dovish Israeli governments, not only with this government that I'm not very happy with, but it's not their fault. We tried, Olmert, Barak, Peres, others tried to have an agreement, and there was no response. But there were responses from many parts in the Arab world. I spoke of Egypt and Jordan and Abraham Accords, who accept Israel, not out of love, but out of reality. This is it. And so whether Bevin was right or wrong, it's a good question, but it's not a still picture. It's evolving. And we have been able to, through politics and through wisdom and through force, to explain to them that they need to come to terms with us. And many of them accepted it. Some didn't. And now with the introduction of fanatic, extreme religious fanaticism of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, it's not politics. It's God's word. You can't compromise. There shouldn't be a Jewish state here. With them, I don't see any way of agreeing. Because if I and you don't agree, we can compromise. You take 60, I 40, we have some compromise. If it's God's word, there's no compromise. And for them, a non-Muslim state is against religion. So with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, unlike the others, it's not a political issue. It's more than that. It's religiously not permissible. So as long as if religion comes into politics, making everything very rigid, you can't compromise, it's going to be tough. I hope it will change, but this is what I see now.
Just pass it behind you.
Good evening, thank you. I lived in Israel during the magnificent years of the former Soviet Union Aliyah. And I saw the changes in the country and was amazed at the process and what it brought to the country as far as development, as far as technology, as far as manpower, as far as science. But today there seems to be a huge human tragedy, I don't know how exactly to define it, where so many of those people who came are not recognized as Jews by the Jewish state. Was there ever a point in the process of bringing these Jews to Israel that this was anticipated? Could it have been turned out differently if we would have dealt with it real time during the Aliyah or immediately after?
I can't, again, what I'm saying now is what I think. Can't quote Shamir on this. Shamir was very secular, and for him, there was no problem at all. We have in this country, in the beginning, there was some, what we call the status quo. There's an agreement by which the religious authorities have jurisdiction on marriage and divorce. You can't marry here as a Jew. If not under Chuppah, Kedat Moshe Israel, you can't marry civil, like in the City Hall in New York and so forth. And as the marriage of Jews in the hands of the rabbinate, people who are not halachically Jewish, because the father was Jewish, the mother wasn't Jewish, but they look upon themselves as Jews and they act as Jews, they came as Jews, are in trouble. And I think it's a shame that we didn't solve it so far. I think it's a big mistake.
And
now it gets worse because of, again, I don't want to go into the story of religion and state, which is now becoming much more heavy because those who, in the old days, there was the Mafdal, the National Religious Party, that tried to combine modernity and religion. Now those who are trying to lead this camp go to the extreme edge of extreme radicalism. You see it around. It has to do with this also, and I think it's a shame that people who think of themselves Jews, made Aliyah to Israel, speak Hebrew, learn in the Hebrew university, work here, fight in the army, sometimes are killed in the army, and they are not recognized as Jews. This is awful. Not only this, the worst for some of those representing the Knesset are the non-Orthodox Jews. I can tell you with Mr. Gafni, one of the heads of the Aguda, when we had the debate, and I was in the Knesset, somebody told him, you don't know them, I'll bring here a conservative or reform rabbi and talk with him. You see, bring me a goy, don't bring a conservative. For them it's worse because they pretend to be Jewish and not Orthodox. Mm. So the question of the pluralism or the variety of Jewish, the ways of being Jew is a major issue. Okay, there was a major issue I said earlier when I quoted Shamir. For us, the idea in the 19th century with the Enlightenment in Europe and then in America and so forth, they created something that never happened, never existed in the past. A Jew who is not religious, secular Jew. Until from the days immemorial, from the exile until the 19th century, if you left the Jewish religion, you left the people that are not Jewish. The idea of secular Jews, from which Zionism came, is something new. Herzl, Jabotinsky, Ben Gurion, Weizmann, all were secular Jews. Very Jews and very secular. Religious people, some don't accept it. If you don't keep all the mitzvot, you're not a good Jew. And I tell them, he's a very good Jew, he's not religious. Like you can be a religious Dutch and secular Dutch, or Dane or Norwegian. You can be a religious Jew and a secular Jew, or a Reform Orthodox. This is something that is against, not against. In diaspora, we had only religion. Now here we are different, and this is something that the religious groups don't accept.
Right.
And it comes to a problematic situation, like in what you said now. People are not considered, not by the state, but by the religious authorities that have authority over marriage and divorce, mainly. Sometimes about funerals, God forbid, when it happens. But the other things, they are like everybody else. They are equal in everything else.
I want to just clarify.
Okay, one more. In my family, we had family that was left in Russia, and we helped some of them make Aliyah. And some of them came, and two sisters. One of them tried and did convert to Judaism. The other tried and got tired of it and didn't. And she married somebody like her, and they lived. Nobody knows it anymore. But if her daughter or son will come to marry, somebody will ask him, are you Jewish? Show me that. So we need to solve it and allow people to take the entire options. All the options should be open to be Jewish this way, with the Reform or Orthodox or whatever way, because this is the world of today. This is the revolution in rebuilding a normal Jewish people, not only by religion, like all other nations. So this is you touched on a very important issue. I know what Shamir thought on this, but I can't quote him because it's not things that I can say specifically, but his attitude was more extreme than what I said now.
I want to just clarify for people in the room or those watching the recording or on the podcast who aren't so aware of this, that what the issue that our questioner raised is relevant because the law of return, as amended in, I think, 1970, says that you can make aliyah with a Jewish grandparent, with a Jewish.
Yeah.
So you had, especially after the aliyah from the former Soviet Union, a huge number, I think 500,000 or so people who made aliyah, who were eligible for Israeli citizenship under the law of return, but were not halachically Jewish. So they were not seen as Jews by the Orthodox rabbinate in Israel. So that group of people and their children and grandchildren are in this kind of limbo state in the current situation. So it's definitely a problematic situation. Okay. Yes, sir. Wait, Abigail, the gentleman here.
So you talked a little bit earlier about the relationship that Shamir had with the U.S.
With-
government, the U.S. president. Can you talk about any special relationships you had with any other government leaders around the world that were special for Shamir?
Any relationship that he had with other foreign leaders? Not you mentioned U.S. presidents.
Yeah,
but any
and
other
we spoke of America, Bush and George Shultz, other leaders. Well, he met many. I want to think of a specific story. Do I have one?
Pressure's
I
on.
don't remember. I know he had remember, who was it in France that Shamir spoke good French. How come? When he escaped the British detention in Africa, and he escaped there. My father couldn't escape. He waited longer. Shamir escaped. He found himself in Djibouti, which was a French, and he was arrested there. And I think he learned French from the people there, and he spoke French before English. English he learned only later. So I think there was somebody in France that was very, I don't remember the name, I can't tell you now. He met many leaders in the chancellor in Germany and British and others, but I can't think of something specific. Maybe it's my memory or there's nothing to tell.
Were there any, I'm just thinking, were there any embarrassing or problematic relations with Britain, given that going back to the mandate period, he would have been a wanted terrorist.
No, it began with Begin.
Right.
When Begin was elected prime minister, and for them, Begin was the head of the underground who fought them. In the Times of London, they said Begin rhymes like Fagin.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Fagin is the thief in Dickens, the Jewish thief. So to say Begin rhymes like Fagin is not an elegant way to explain how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
But they accepted Begin, of course, and he was in Britain and had good relation with Margaret Thatcher, I remember. And Shamir the same, I don't think. See, they had it with all the British, the sun never sets over the British Empire. Right. So they had Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, and they spoke with him, and he became prime minister. Right. Yeah, people fought them to get rid of them. And they had, I don't think there was a problem. Okay. People who didn't like us don't like us, but I don't think there was a problem with that in Shamir, no.
Okay. Yes, madam. Wait for the mic. Wait for the mic, please.
Thank you for sharing all of this with us, especially your personal anecdotes. Could you tell us something about his wife, about Mrs. Shamir?
Shamir's wife. Yes,
about his wife.
Yeah.
Is there any role in public that she had or influence behind the scenes and your interactions, perhaps?
Yeah, I didn't know her before. I knew her when he was there. And there was a time when, in 1987, 88, that was in his government, I was still a member of Knesset still, and my wife passed away some years ago, took all our 4 kids to MIT to do a postdoctorate. So I couldn't go because of the Knesset. I was commuting between Logan Airport and Ben Gurion Airport. But then Shamir invited many times to have dinner with them at home. So I knew Shulamit Shamir through this quite well. He knew her from the underground. She was a fighter in the underground, in the Lehi. She comes from Bulgarian Jewish family. She has strong views, but again, I can't go between them. I didn't see any problem. There was a very solid family. He would go home every day at 1 or 1:30. He would eat with Shulamit and come back to work. And this was a family.
And she didn't seek any role.
No. Neither she nor Allah Begin. No, never.
Right.
They didn't know of this option that we hear of now. No, they didn't want, they not no guards and no special car, nothing. It was, she was the wife of Prime Minister. They didn't say when Shamir came in, didn't say for Prime Minister and his wife. It was Prime Minister Shamir.
Right.
The wife was there, and, respectful, but nobody, there was nothing. I don't know where she might have done something in charity, but no, nothing. No.
Right.
This was it was not only her. I mean, it was not the case. Very few exceptions. She was a modest lady, and she took care of him in tough times. When he was arrested, when he was on the underground, and they had the children. They have. It's a family that went through a lot, and they were together very. I think everything was fine with them.
Okay, let's have one last question, if there is one.
Oh, everything is clear.
Everything's been answered. Fantastic. Okay, we're gonna have one more.
Yeah.
Just wait for the mic, and this will be the final question. No pressure. It has to be a good one for last question.
You talked about the difficulty or ease of negotiating with the Arab mentality. And I'm just wondering, compared to those days when you were involved in those negotiating meetings, how do you feel that the non-Israeli sides today, Americans or Europeans, understand the difference between our mentality, a Western mentality, not Israeli, but a Western mentality, and the Arab mentality in terms of coming to the negotiating table?
Well, there are many people in the West. I don't know. Some people understand better, some understand less. But I think I know there is this common thinking that they are very different. Yes, there are differences even within the Jewish world here. I can show you groups of Jews from the background, a different mentality. It's okay. In America, in England, not everybody has the same mentality in many issues. Some people, I don't want you know it. I think that I know that the thinking that we don't understand their mentality, this is why, if it's an excuse why not to take any risk, it's a mistake. I can give you the Begin-Sadat agreement. Arabs, full Arabs. Sadat, the most important Arab country, the biggest, and he's the dictator. What are you doing? It's still this decision, the risks that he took with it. Now, 50 years later, shows to be the most important decision that was taken. Because, they're Arabs. They are different from us. We are Jews, they are Arabs, fine. But there is thinking, and there's politics, and there's the relationship, and it works. We don't have other neighbors. These are the ones we have. Do the French know the Germans? Yeah, the Germans, Heine, Goethe, Schiller, Immanuel Kant, the great things, and they occupied France and killed so many people. Is there a German mentality? I thought there was one regarding other Jews. Today, Germany is a friend of ours. So I don't know. I know there is a mentality issue with all of us. When I speak to somebody, I try, not only politics, to understand where he comes from, when he says the word, what does it mean to him? When he speaks of agreements, does he mean to keep it? This is human nature. And maybe there is something in the Muslim religion that says you can, they say there is agreement you keep. If it's good for you, you can tear to pieces. If it's bad for you, I can show you things like this in other, I don't want to mention now, but it's there. But what can you do? These are the neighbors, and with them we have to live somehow, or fight if we need to fight. I think again, Americans in the American State Department, there was a man, I don't know whether it's Gamal Hilal, he's Egyptian by origin. There was a man, Philip Habib, who was Lebanese by origin. He was born, I think, in New York. I think he spoke Yiddish from his, he grew in Brooklyn, but he's an Arab, Christian Arab. I met him many times. And they of course understand it. They are part of the State Department. So I don't think they understand something that in the end, the secretary doesn't understand. If people are rational, they speak with each other. It's not a secret thing. Yeah, people have different mentalities and different cultures, and sometimes the same word means different things in different languages. For some people, agreements should be kept. This is a Latin maxim that one says again. For some people, agreements are something you can throw. I don't want to speak of Jews and Arabs who did something like that just recently here. So I don't know, I don't put a lot of mentality. Yeah, we are different. This is why there are Jews and Germans and English and French and everybody has his own mentality. And we need to find a way either to fight for your survival or to have agreements. The mentality is there, but it doesn't change much for me. I think the Americans, again, the American administration today is incomprehensible to me. I don't know what they want, what they mean. I don't understand. But usually I think I met people who understood what happens. I don't always agree with them. Sometimes I think they are wrong. But I don't think the problem of mentality is that important. I know it's common knowledge that it is. I never found it very disturbing. I accept there are differences. Even me and my friends don't have the same mentality, the same intention. We find ways to live with each other.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan Meridor. We will, as I said, 3 days' time, Sunday, we'll be hearing about Shimon Peres, and then the following Sunday is the last in this series when we will be hearing about Ariel Sharon. Sunday the 16th. Look forward to see you then. Thank you.
Now you take this, right? You hear me?
You know, there's that famous.
Was it hard for me to hear? My